Sleeping Dogs. Sleeping Dogs feels just as good to play now as it did when it came out. It throws you into Hong Kong as Wei Shen, an undercover cop trying to take down the triads, and it's still one of the best crime stories in gaming. The combat is a highlight punching, countering, and using the environment to finish off enemies feels amazing. Seriously, throwing a guy into a fish tank or smashing them into a wall never gets old. The driving is smooth and fun, whether you're racing through neon-lit streets or in the middle of a high-speed chase. Shooting feels solid too, especially with the slow-motion gunfights straight out of a Hong Kong action movie. But it's not just about fighting and driving, the story really pulls you in. Wei is caught between his duty as a cop and the loyalty he starts to feel toward the gang, and the characters around him make it all feel real. It's like playing through a top-tier crime drama. Even the world holds up. Hong Kong is packed with life-bustling markets, glowing signs, and people going about their day. The side activities like street racing and fight clubs are just fun to mess around with and never feel like filler. If you grab the definitive edition, it looks even better with updated graphics and all the extra content. Honestly, Sleeping Dogs hasn't aged, it feels like it could have come out yesterday. Ryse Son of Rome. Ryse Son of Rome might be from 2013, but it still looks like a game from the future. The visuals were mind-blowing when it launched, and they still hold up today. Every detail from the armor to the massive battlefields looks incredible. You play as Marius Titus, a Roman soldier out for revenge, and the game throws you right into brutal, cinematic combat that makes every fight feel like it's straight out of a movie. The combat is simple but satisfying. It's all about timing your attacks, blocks, and executions, and those finishers are brutal in the best way. Yeah, it's a bit repetitive, but the presentation is so good, it's hard to care. Each fight feels like part of this larger, epic story. The story itself has some real weight. It's about loyalty, betrayal, and revenge, with Marius fighting through one of the most turbulent times in Roman history. The performances bring it all to life, and the pacing keeps things moving without dragging. Even now, Ryse feels ahead of its time in how it handles scale. The massive battles, the detailed environments, and the way the camera pans across the action, it's all seamless. Sure, it's not the deepest game, but it's such a spectacle that it's easy to get lost in the experience. If you're looking for a game that still feels fresh and can show off what your PC or console can do, Ryse Son of Rome is a no-brainer. It's short, but it's a ride you won't forget. Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 doesn't just hold up, it still feels like a blueprint for how open world shooters should be done. Released in 2012, it throws you onto a gorgeous tropical island full of danger, chaos, and one of the most memorable villains gaming has ever seen. You play as Jason Brody, a privileged tourist who ends up stranded with his friends on an island run by pirates and lunatics. What starts as a mission to save your friends quickly turns into a descent into madness, violence, and survival. The gameplay is what makes it timeless. Far Cry 3 gives you the freedom to tackle things your way. Taking over an enemy outpost, you could sneak around, taking out enemies one by one with a silenced bow, or go loud, throwing grenades and lighting everything on fire. The game doesn't force you into a specific playstyle, it gives you the tools and lets you decide how to use them. And honestly, outpost takeovers never stop being fun. Exploration is another huge part of why it holds up. The island feels alive, from its dense jungles to hidden caves and stunning beaches. You're not just running from mission to mission, you're hunting animals to craft gear, finding relics, and stumbling upon random encounters that make the world feel dynamic. It's one of those games where you start out planning to do one thing and suddenly lose hours chasing distractions because everything's so engaging. And then there's Voss. He's not just the standout villain of this game, he's one of the best villains in gaming, period. His charisma, his unpredictability, and his iconic definition of insanity speech are burned into gaming history. But it's not just Voss. Far Cry 3 does a great job of making you question Jason's transformation. The story doesn't just ask, can you survive? It asks, at what cost? Even visually, the game still holds up well. The vibrant colors of the island, the detail in the environments, and the dynamic weather make it feel alive even years later. Combine that with tight shooting mechanics, a solid upgrade system, and a ton of side content, and it's easy to see why it's still a favorite. Far Cry 3 isn't just a fun game, it's an experience that sticks with you. Whether you're revisiting it or playing it for the first time, it's the kind of game that feels just as fresh today as it did over a decade ago. Deus Ex Human Revolution. Deus Ex Human Revolution is one of those games that feels ahead of its time even now. Released in 2011, it's a cyberpunk RPG that dives deep into themes of transhumanism, corporate control, and personal identity. You play as Adam Jensen, a security specialist who's pulled into a conspiracy after being nearly killed in an attack and rebuilt with cutting-edge augmentations. It's a story that makes you think about the cost of progress and how far humanity should go with technology. The gameplay is all about choice. You can approach every mission your way, sneak through vents and hack security systems, talk your way past guards, or go in guns blazing. The game doesn't punish you for choosing one path over another, and the satisfaction of pulling off a perfect stealth run or finding a creative solution never gets old. Hacking is a huge part of the game too, and it's surprisingly fun, adding an extra layer of strategy to how you move through the world. The world itself feels alive and immersive. Set in a gritty, futuristic version of Detroit and other cities, the environments are packed with detail, from towering neon skyscrapers to the small, cluttered apartments of NPCs. Every location has its own story to tell, and exploring off the beaten path is always rewarded, whether it's with lore, gear, or alternate routes to your objectives. One of the best parts of the game is its dialogue system. Conversations with key characters feel like battles of wits, where your choices and how you built Adam's personality can completely change outcomes. These moments make the story feel personal, and they're just as engaging as any firefight. The augmentation system adds another layer of depth. You can upgrade Adam's abilities to suit your playstyle, enhance his hacking skills, boost his stealth capabilities, or turn him into a walking tank. The flexibility makes replaying the game just as fun as the first time, letting you experiment with new builds and approaches. Sure, the boss fights are a weak spot. They force combat when the rest of the game encourages freedom, but even they've been improved in the director's cut version, which smooths out a lot of those rough edges. Deus Ex Human Revolution doesn't just hold up, it feels like it could have been released yesterday. The story, the atmosphere, and the player choice are all top-notch, and it's a must-play for anyone into cyberpunk or RPGs. It's one of those games that just gets better with time. Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception. Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception is a perfect example of a game that hasn't aged a bit. Released in 2011, it still feels like a modern action-adventure with its cinematic storytelling, incredible set pieces, and sharp gameplay. This time around, Nathan Drake's journey dives deeper into his past, focusing on his bond with Sully and a hunt for the legendary lost city of Ubar, the Atlantis of the Sands. The set pieces in this game are insane, even by today's standards. You've got the collapsing chateau, the unforgettable cargo plane sequence, and the desert trek that's as much about survival as it is about spectacle. These moments feel larger than life, but they never overshadow the personal story underneath it all. Combat and traversal are still rock solid. The mix of third-person shooting, melee combat, and parkour keeps things fast-paced and fun. The gunfights feel snappy, and the melee system adds a layer of brawling that feels weighty and satisfying. On the exploration side, climbing, jumping, and solving puzzles across ancient ruins and hidden chambers feels just as fresh as ever. What really makes Uncharted 3 stand out though is its characters. The banter between Drake and Sully is pitch perfect, and the introduction of new foes like Catherine Marlowe adds a layer of intrigue and tension. The story balances humor, drama, and high-stakes action in a way that keeps you hooked from start to finish. And let's not forget the world design. The locations are stunning, from bustling Middle Eastern cities to scorching deserts and lush ruins. The attention to detail is incredible, making every place feel alive and part of a larger world. Even the quieter moments like Drake and Sully reminiscing or piecing together clues help ground the over-the-top adventure. Uncharted 3's remastered version in the Nathan Drake collection brings it up to modern standards with polished visuals and smoother performance, but even the original holds up incredibly well. It's a game that combines heart-pounding action with a strong narrative, making it just as fun to play today as it was when it first came out. Whether you're revisiting it or diving in for the first time, this is an adventure that still feels timeless. Bioshock 2007. Bioshock is one of those games that immediately pulls you in and doesn't let go. You start as Jack, the sole survivor of a plane crash, who stumbles upon a lighthouse that leads to Rapture's sprawling, underwater city built on the promise of freedom and ambition. But what you find isn't a utopia, it's a crumbling, dystopian nightmare filled with deranged splicers, massive big daddies, and an atmosphere that oozes tension. The gameplay combines first-person shooting with plasmids, which are essentially superpowers you inject into yourself. You can shock enemies with electricity, set them on fire, or even unleash a swarm of bees from your hand. Yeah, it's as cool as it sounds. The combat isn't just about shooting, it's about using your environment, traps, and creativity to survive. What makes Bioshock unforgettable is its story and the way it's told. You're not bombarded with cutscenes. Instead, you piece things together through audio diaries, eerie surroundings, and the cryptic guidance of Atlas, the man helping you navigate Rapture. And then there's Andrew Ryan, the city's founder, whose philosophy of unchecked ambition and self-interest shaped Rapture into the terrifying place it's become. His speeches in that one infamous moment, "Would you kindly?" are still some of the most iconic in gaming history.
Stand! Would you kindly?
Rapture itself feels alive, even in its decay. The Art Deco design, the creaking sound of underwater pressure, and the haunting music make it one of the most atmospheric settings ever created. Every room, hallway, and sign tells a story, making exploration just as compelling as the combat. The moral choices in the game add another layer. Do you save the little sisters, the creepy but innocent children, or harvest them for power? The decision is yours, and it changes how the game ends. Even today, Bioshock feels timeless. It's not just the gameplay or the visuals, it's the way the game asks deeper questions about morality, free will, and the cost of ambition. Whether it's your first time or your 10th, returning to Rapture is always worth it. It's not just a game, it's a piece of art. Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 is a masterpiece that hasn't aged a day. Released in 2010, it still feels like a modern RPG thanks to its tight gameplay, incredible storytelling, and unforgettable characters. You step back into the role of Commander Shepard, tasked with assembling a crew for a suicide mission against a mysterious alien threat called the Collectors. It's high stakes from the very beginning, and the game never lets up. The combat in Mass Effect 2 is a huge step up from the first game. It's smoother, faster, and more satisfying, with a mix of tight third-person shooting and special abilities that let you control the battlefield. Whether you're lifting enemies with biotics, freezing them with cryo ammo, or just mowing them down with a shotgun, the action feels amazing. What really makes the game timeless, though, is the cast. Every crew member has their own story, personality, and loyalty mission that fleshes them out in ways that few games manage. From the badass mercenary Garrus to the mysterious assassin Thane and the volatile biotic Jack, every character feels like a real person with their own goals and struggles. The loyalty missions are some of the best parts of the game, giving you a deeper connection to your squad while also impacting the story.
Thank you, Legion. I understand your...
The choices you make matter big time. Who you recruit, how you treat them, and even small decisions ripple out, not just in this game, but across the trilogy. The final mission is a masterclass in tension and stakes, with your crew's survival depending on how well you've prepared and the choices you've made. The world building is just as impressive. Mass Effect 2 expands the galaxy, letting you visit vibrant new locations like the seedy underworld of Omega or the corporate paradise of Ilium. Every planet, every piece of lore, and every interaction adds to the feeling that this is a living, breathing universe. Even today, Mass Effect 2 feels ahead of its time. The Legendary Edition gives it a fresh coat of paint with updated visuals and smoother performance, but honestly, the original still holds up. The mix of action, character-driven storytelling, and meaningful choices makes it an all-time classic. Whether you're replaying it or jumping in for the first time, it's a game that feels as new and exciting now as it did over a decade ago. Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption is one of those games that doesn't feel like it's aged at all. You play as John Marston, a former outlaw trying to leave his past behind, but the government forces him to track down his old gang. It's not just a story about revenge, it's about loyalty, family, and the cost of freedom, and it's all told so well that it still hits hard today. The gameplay keeps it simple but fun, gunfights are intense, riding across the open plains feels natural, and there's always something to keep you busy, whether it's hunting, gambling, or just helping random strangers you meet along the way. The world feels alive, from the quiet towns to the sprawling deserts, and there's this perfect balance between action and just soaking it all in.
If you don't mind,
What really makes it timeless is the story. The characters feel real, and John's struggle to do right by his family while dealing with his past is unforgettable. The ending? It's one of those moments that stays with you no matter how many years pass. If you haven't played it in a while, trust me, it still feels just as good as it did back then. Infamous Second Son. Infamous Second Son puts you in the shoes of Delsin Rowe, a young guy who suddenly finds himself with superpowers and a big choice fight for freedom or take the darker path. The game is set in Seattle, and it does a great job making the city feel alive. Even if it's not the biggest open world out there, you've got all these cool powers, and honestly, they're what make the game so fun. Smoke lets you dash around or launch through vents, neon gives you insane speed and precision, and concrete, well, that's for when you're ready to smash everything in sight. The story's pretty solid. It's about Delsin figuring out who he is and what kind of person he wants to be. The choices you make, whether to help people or just go full chaos mode, change how characters react to you and what kind of hero or anti-hero you become. It's not super deep, but it gets the job done, especially with how much personality Delsin and his brother Reggie bring to the table. Their back and forth feels real, like actual brothers messing with each other while still looking out for one another. Combat is all about freedom. You can go in loud, mix up your powers, or pick enemies off while flying around the city. Switching between abilities is seamless, and each one feels unique. It's not just about fighting either. Zipping up buildings and jumping across rooftops is so smooth it makes just moving around fun. The side content adds to the experience without feeling like a chore. There's tagging walls with graffiti. Delsin's an artist after all, breaking up enemy strongholds, and these smaller moments that make you feel like part of the world. It's not overloaded with busy work, which keeps things focused on the fun. Visually, the game does a great job showing off Seattle's rain-soaked streets, neon lights, and grungy vibe. Even the smallest details like the graffiti spray or the way powers look when you use them make everything pop. Infamous Second Son is just a fun game to dive into. The story's engaging enough to pull you through, but the real joy is just messing around with the powers and seeing how far you can push things. Psychonauts 2005. Psychonauts is one of those games that's just pure creativity from start to finish. You play as Rasputin Razzaquato, a kid with psychic powers who sneaks into a summer camp for psychic trainees. What starts as a fun adventure about learning new powers quickly turns into a wild journey through the minds of some truly unforgettable characters. The big hook of the game is how each level takes place inside someone's mind. These aren't your standard platformer levels, each one is completely unique, shaped by the personality, fears, and quirks of the person whose brain terrain you're exploring. One minute you're sneaking through a conspiracy-filled suburb in a paranoid mind, and the next, you're a giant monster stomping through a city in a kaiju-style level. The variety is insane, and it keeps the game fresh all the way through. Gameplay-wise, it's a mix of platforming, exploration, and using your psychic powers in creative ways. You can float on a psychic bubble, set things on fire with pyrokinesis, or even read people's minds. The controls can feel a little dated at times, but the sheer inventiveness of the levels makes up for it. The camp acts as your hub world, and it's packed with secrets to find and quirky campers to meet. Exploring it between missions is almost as fun as diving into someone's brain. There's always something weird or funny happening, and the art style makes it all feel like a living, breathing cartoon. Psychonauts is the kind of game that sticks with you. It's not just about the platforming or the powers, it's about the sheer creativity and charm packed into every moment. Whether you're playing it for the first time or revisiting it, it's one of the most unique and imaginative games ever made. The Last of Us. The Last of Us is more than just a game, it's a story that sticks with you long after you're done playing. You follow Joel, a broken man with a tragic past, and Ellie, a young girl who might just hold the key to humanity's survival, as they travel across a brutal post-apocalyptic America. The relationship between these two is the heart of the game, and watching it grow feels so real and raw, it's hard not to get emotionally invested. The gameplay is intense, balancing stealth and survival. Resources are scarce, so every bullet, every crafting decision matters. Whether you're sneaking past clickers or fighting off desperate humans, the tension is always high. Combat feels brutal and personal, but it's not over the top, it's grounded, which makes every encounter feel dangerous. The world is a mix of beauty and decay. Overgrown cities, abandoned homes, and hauntingly quiet streets tell their own stories. Exploring isn't just about scavenging supplies, it's about soaking in the atmosphere and piecing together the lives of the people who used to live there. The writing and performances are what really make The Last of Us stand out. Joel and Ellie feel like real people thanks to the incredible voice acting and attention to detail in their interactions. The dialogue is sharp and natural, and the story pulls no punches. It's dark, heartbreaking, and full of moments that make you stop and think. This isn't just a game about zombies or infected. It's about humanity, how far people will go to survive, the bonds we form, and the lines we're willing to cross. It's heavy, but that's what makes it so unforgettable. Even years later, The Last of Us holds up because it's not just about gameplay, it's about the experience. Whether you're diving in for the first time or replaying it, it's a journey worth taking.
I got this.
Heavy Rain. Heavy Rain is one of those games that pulls you in with its story and doesn't let go. It's a psychological thriller where every decision you make has consequences, and those consequences can completely change how the game plays out. The story revolves around the origami killer, a serial murderer targeting children, and you play as 4 different characters, each with their own connection to the case. What makes Heavy Rain stand out is how personal it feels. There are no do-overs here. If a character dies, the story moves on without them. Every choice, every quick time event, every piece of dialogue carries weight. It's not just about solving the mystery, it's about how you navigate the emotions and dilemmas of each character. The game does an amazing job creating tension. Whether you're crawling through broken glass, confronting a suspect, or rushing to save someone's life, it keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's not about shooting or fighting, it's about reacting in the moment, and that makes every scene feel intense and real. The characters themselves are what make the story so engaging. There's Ethan, a father searching for his missing son Madison, a journalist digging into the case Norman, an FBI profiler with his own demons, and Scott, a private investigator who feels like he's seen it all. Their paths cross in ways that feel natural, and the game does a great job of making you care about what happens to them. Visually, Heavy Rain still holds up, especially with the remastered versions. The moody lighting, rain-soaked streets, and detailed facial animations all add to the atmosphere. It's not a huge world, but it's packed with small details that make it feel alive. This isn't a game about winning, it's about the story you create through your choices. It's emotional, suspenseful, and full of twists that'll keep you guessing until the very end. If you're into narrative-driven games that make you think, Heavy Rain is an experience you won't forget.
Are you the killer, Ethan?
The killer is walking around free as we speak.
Ethan Mars is innocent. I can prove it.
Metro 2033. Metro 2033 throws you into a world where survival feels real. It's set in the ruins of Moscow after a nuclear apocalypse, with humanity scraping by in the underground metro tunnels. You play as Artyom, a young guy trying to protect his home station from terrifying new threats. The story is simple at first, deliver a warning, but it quickly becomes something much bigger and darker. What really pulls you in is the atmosphere. The metro tunnels aren't just places you pass through, they feel alive in a grim, unsettling way. The flicker of a dying light, the sound of something scuttling just out of sight, or the distant echoes of a voice all work together to keep you constantly on edge. And when you venture to the surface, it's a different kind of terrifying. The air is toxic, the landscape is a frozen wasteland, and the mutants are deadlier than ever. The gameplay focuses more on survival than action. Sure, you'll have gunfights, but ammo is scarce and every bullet matters. Some bullets are even currency, so wasting them isn't just careless, it's expensive. You'll find yourself sneaking past enemies or carefully planning fights because charging in isn't usually an option. Managing your gear, especially your gas mask and filters, adds this extra layer of tension that makes every decision feel important. The world building is what makes it special. The Metro isn't just a setting, it's a collection of communities, each with its own rules, struggles, and personalities. You'll meet traders, soldiers, and wanderers, and their stories give the game a lot of heart. It's not just about monsters and mutants, it's about what's left of humanity and how they're holding on. If you've never played it, Metro 2033 is worth experiencing for its atmosphere alone, and if you have, it's one of those games that keeps pulling you back, not for flashy action, but for the way it makes you feel like you're really surviving in its world. Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 isn't just a game, it's an experience that rewrote the rules for first-person shooters. Released in 2004, it still feels modern because of how well it handles storytelling, gameplay, and world building without ever pulling you out of the action. You play as Gordon Freeman, the silent scientist turned revolutionary fighting against the alien Combine regime that's turned Earth into a dystopian nightmare. The pacing is what makes this game timeless. It's not just non-stop shooting, there are quiet moments of exploration, puzzle solving, and just soaking in the world. 1 minute you're battling combined forces in tight corridors, and the next you're driving across a desolate highway or navigating a creepy zombie-filled town like Ravenholm. Every section feels different, but it all flows together so smoothly. And then there's the gravity gun. It's one of the most iconic weapons in gaming, letting you pick up and throw objects in creative and often ridiculous ways. It's not just a gimmick, it's woven into combat and puzzles, making you think about the environment in ways most shooters never bother with. The world building is incredible. City 17 feels oppressive and lived in, with the Combine's brutal architecture towering over rundown neighborhoods. The resistance fighters and random citizens you meet don't just exist to fill space, they make the world feel alive. You don't need endless exposition because everything from the design of the enemies to the scraps of propaganda you see tells you exactly what kind of world you're in. Even now, Half-Life 2 holds up because it's not just about flashy visuals or complicated mechanics, it's about creating a world you believe in and giving you the tools to have fun in it. Whether you're solving physics puzzles, taking down striders, or just listening to the eerie soundscapes, the game never stops being engaging. It's a classic for a reason and still worth playing today, whether you're revisiting it or diving in for the first time. Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Origins is the kind of RPG that doesn't come around often. It's rich in story, packed with tough decisions, and gives you the freedom to shape your adventure in a way that feels personal. You start as a Grey Warden, part of an Ancient Order tasked with stopping the Blight, a catastrophic event where Darkspawn rise from underground to destroy everything in their path. But the story isn't just about saving the world, it's about the people you meet, the choices you make, and the consequences you live with. One of the game's biggest strengths is its origins system. The story begins differently depending on your race and class, whether you're a noble dwarf and elf living in the slums, or a mage trapped in a strict magical tower. These backstories aren't just throwaway introductions, they shape how the world and its characters react to you, making every playthrough feel unique. Combat is tactical and satisfying. You can pause the action to issue commands to your party, planning out every move, or you can jump right into the fray and fight in real time. Each companion brings something different to the table. Alistair's tanking abilities, Morrigan's devastating magic, or Lyanna's sneaky backstabbing, and learning how to use your party effectively is part of the fun. The choices you make carry weight. Do you help the werewolves or side with the elves? Will you allow a demon to possess someone to save a life? Even the ending depends on your decisions, making it feel like your story rather than one you're just watching unfold. The world of Ferelden is gritty, dark, and full of lore. Every location from the spooky ruins of the Brazilian forest to the underground city of Orzammar feels alive, with history and conflict baked into every corner. You'll want to explore every inch, not just for the loot but to uncover the layers of the world. Dragon Age Origins doesn't just tell a story, it pulls you into one. It's a game where your choices matter, your companions feel like friends or enemies, and the world feels bigger than what's on the screen. If you haven't played it, you're missing out on one of the best RPGs ever made, and if you have, it's always worth another journey through Ferelden. Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2 is the perfect mix of chaotic combat, sharp humor, and addictive loot hunting. It's a first-person shooter, but it's not just about pulling the trigger, it's about blowing stuff up in the most ridiculous ways possible while chasing that next big, shiny gun. Set on the planet of Pandora, you're a vault hunter on a mission to stop Handsome Jack, one of the most memorable and hilariously evil villains in gaming. The gameplay is fast, explosive, and endlessly fun. Guns are the star here, and there are millions of them, everything from sniper rifles that shoot fire to rocket launchers that explode into more rockets. No two guns feel the same, and finding one that suits your style is half the fun. The combat keeps you on your toes with waves of enemies, wild abilities, and co-op chaos if you're playing with friends. Each character class brings something unique to the table. Whether you're going stealthy with 0-0, dual wielding with Salvador, or summoning a turret with Axton, the game lets you play however you want. Skill trees give you tons of customization so you can focus on tanking, dealing damage, or supporting your squad. Pandora itself is packed with personality. It's not just about barren wastelands. There are frozen tundras, toxic swamps, and bustling bandit hideouts, each with its own vibe and crazy inhabitants. The game never takes itself too seriously, and that's part of the charm. The writing is full of sarcastic humor and one-liners, and the side missions are just as entertaining as the main story, whether you're taking down a giant monster or helping a psycho throw a tea party. Handsome Jack steals the show. He's a villain you love to hate, constantly taunting you over the radio with his smug, sarcastic remarks. He's a big part of why the story sticks with you. It's over the top, but it's also surprisingly engaging, especially when things get personal toward the end. What really makes Borderlands 2 timeless is how easy it is to pick up and play. Whether you're diving in solo or teaming up with friends, it's a game that's all about having fun. The loot, the humor, the non-stop action, it all comes together in a way that feels fresh no matter how many times you play. Batman Arkham Knight. Batman Arkham Knight lets you step into the Dark Knight's boots like never before. Set in an open-world Gotham City, the game throws you into the middle of chaos as Scarecrow and the mysterious Arkham Knight team up to bring Batman down for good. It's a darker, more intense story, and it pushes Batman to his limits both physically and mentally. The gameplay takes everything the Arkham series is known for and cranks it up. The free-flow combat is as smooth as ever, letting you string together brutal combos while countering enemies and using gadgets mid-fight. Predator mode is back too, giving you the freedom to stalk, terrify, and pick off enemies one by one. It's all about making you feel like Batman powerful but always in control. Then there's the Batmobile. Love it or hate it, it's a big part of the game. You can race through Gotham streets, use it to solve puzzles, or transform it into a tank to take on waves of enemy drones. While some of the Batmobile missions can feel a bit overdone, the sheer fun of driving through Gotham at full speed makes up for it. The open world is stunning. Gotham City feels alive with its neon signs, pouring rain, and dark, eerie alleys. There's always something to do, whether it's stopping random crimes, hunting down Riddler trophies, or taking on side missions that feature classic villains like Two-Face Penguin and Poison Ivy. Each side quest feels meaningful, adding layers to the world, rather than just padding out the game. The story is one of the best in the series. It dives deep into Bruce Wayne's psyche, exploring his guilt, fear, and the weight of being Batman. The Arkham Knight himself adds a new layer of tension, and the way his identity ties into Bruce's past is handled beautifully. Throw in Scarecrow's mind games, and you've got a narrative that keeps you hooked all the way through. Batman Arkham Knight isn't just a great Batman game, it's one of the best superhero games ever made. It's packed with action, story, and atmosphere, making it a must-play for anyone who's ever wanted to be the Dark Knight.